What is up, guys? It's Zooey, and today we're going to be talking about Tera's PvP and what exactly happened to it. For those of you guys who may not be aware, well, maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but if you browse through Tera's forums, you go to the subreddit, or if you even go in game, you'll probably come across comments such as, "Is Tera's PvP dead?" or "What's up with these really slow queue times on Battlegrounds?" Most people who play Tera would probably agree that it has really good PvP. The MMO itself is true action combat where there's skill involved, not just on your decision making, but your timing and spacing. Hell, even your aiming comes into play as well. So if it has all this, why is Tera's PvP, why do people say that it's dead? Well, this wasn't always the case. Tera's PvP scene was pretty intense and lively between 2013 and 2014. Around this time you'd have big names, a lot of top guilds known to have only the best PvPers, and leaderboards that showed the best not just in your server, but for every server as well. From time to time, NMAS even hosted tournaments such as Skyrim Slam and Canyon Clash. For those of you guys who weren't around in those days, Team 3s was really active. It was generally the place you went to show the entire PvP community that you were a total badass, and Outscores was packed with people who wanted to be good in PvP to someday, maybe be known by the PvP community. So update by update, this all started to change. It wasn't a single update that ended it all, it was more of a combination of gradual changes that appeared as though the game were trying to force competition away and what you work towards away. The first was the Crusades. This update pretty much got rid of global rankings and kept rankings specific to servers you played in. PvP was still active at this time since Crusades did encourage PvP, and guilds did try to recruit some of the best PvPers so that they maintained the top ranks, but underneath all this, it took the bigger picture of PvP away. And that was to work towards becoming one of the best PvPers in Tera. Without realizing it, many PvPers no longer had this goal in mind, because becoming the best in your server was enough without a global ranking to show the rest. The second was the Awakening system. It's pretty simple. If you start to gate content off with gear requirement, you'll typically end up with content that only caters to the hardcore. Think of this like Heraldhold raids these days. Any raid serious about clearing requires every member to have plus 15 before you can even get started. Apply this same logic to 3v3. Suddenly, everyone who enjoyed PvPing in Tera was required to get a full set of plus 15 gear if they even wanted to compete. But let's get one thing straight. A PvPer is not always a PvEer. A PvEer is not always a PvPer. Little by little, these updates chipped away on the community who loved Tera PvP for what it was. Some of the most skilled PvPers who weren't PvEers couldn't compete against those who did both PvP and PvE. The plus 15 gear difference made the difference in 3v3, and acquiring plus 15 was no easy feat back then. Making content that was populated by the skilled to now require significant funding as well made 10% into the 1% that could actually play the content. These days, anyone who puts time into the game will typically have a plus 15, but back then it was extremely difficult. Recall when I said that Tera had big name players, and those players would go down in Tera history. This update almost single-handedly got rid of all of them, and as a player who aspired to become like them, it was really demoralizing and took away the goals of becoming the best PvPer. July 18th marks the day of the last Crusade update. As the name implies, the Crusade came to an end after this update. What we lost in the initial Crusade, such as the global PvP rankings, was never brought back. The server-specific rankings we also got was now gone. We weren't working towards anything anymore, in terms of PvP. We also weren't competing in anything anymore. It was also around this time when the game attempted to use PvP to become more of an alternative to acquire material for gear instead of being its own standalone content. The update after update, PvP was left in the dust, and who could blame them? PvE was the most played content, since you have to play it to gear up anyway. Tera has turned into a game where you gear up with the purpose of gearing up. We don't have content that you work towards to compete in anymore. Actually, I take that back. We have Moongord now, where we rely on a third-party program to provide us with rankings. Don't get me wrong, Moongord is nice, and there are people who genuinely have fun competing for the top spots on there. But at the end of the day, it's a ranking for PvEers, and we PvPers, still to this day, have nothing. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video because I had a lot of fun putting it together and putting my thoughts out there. I took a lot of breaks on Tera, so if you guys, if there's anything I missed that contributed to the decline of PvP, let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to comment on your comments. So I'm well aware that there's a lot of things that contributed to the decline of PvP, such as class balance, lack of newly added PvP content, no more officially hosted tournaments, changes to open world PvP, community toxicity towards entry-level healers, all contributed. However, this would be an entire video on its own. We'll be back with a part 2. Thank you guys for watching, but before you guys go, like I promised in my last video, I'll be selecting 3 random winners from the comments for various loot boxes from Tera's recent sales, so leave a comment with your in-game name and server for a chance to win. Thanks again guys, and I'll see you in my next video.